So the class, or most of the class that has spoken to me so far, has finished writing the test. I'll also, for those of you watching on YouTube, I'll link to the test and to 2 hints for the test in the bottom. For practice, please write the test before you watch the review, although as long as you're learning, I suppose it's technically all right. Okay, but shall we just start moving through it? So question 1 to 10, I think these are the important takeaway ones. I think you guys will probably see them again when you write the final exam, although obviously the questions are randomized, so I'm not sure. I can't make any promises, but these first 10, if you were good on them, then I reckon you're pretty good for chapter 4. Okay, but let's go through them. So first question: you are developing a web page for a medium-sized business. You want to separate the formatting and layout of the page from its content. Which of the following techniques should you use to define the formatting and layout of the page content? So cascading style sheets, HTML, JavaScript, or HTTP. Okay, I'll give it, so you guys can answer in the chat, by the way, A, B, C, D, if you're feeling confident of your answers, or I guess you can actually see them in the viewed response. So yeah, Alex, you say CSS, and that is correct, but let's go through and see why it's correct, right? So HTTP is used to transfer hypertext documents. It's not used to customize their formatting and layout. So HTTP is not correct here. JavaScript is used for more advanced functionality, right? For like actual scripting, for coding. It's not really used for formatting and layout. So that leaves us with CSS and HTML. And in a way, they are a little bit tricky in the wording of the questions. So they say you want to separate the formatting and layout of the page from its content. Okay, so if you see layout, you guys know you can do a lot of layout things in HTML, actually. You can do a lot of layout, or at least like basic templating. But yeah, the word formatting gives away that this would have to be CSS because we're splitting formatting and layout from content. Okay, so the content of the page will definitely be specified in HTML. So how are we going to separate the formatting and layout from that? It'll be CSS. This one I don't think should be too bad, and actually the first few I think we should be okay on. So question 2. You want to display an image on your web page. The image is stored on a separate web server, but can be accessed with a public URL. Which of the following HTML, and this one, I think all of you guys would have gotten from our little practical demonstrations of HTML, right? Embedding our GIFs and stuff into our web page. So yeah, the image tag. The other tags, so link, that's how we point to CSS documents. A tag is how we create hyperlinks. HTML is, well, you're not going to use it to display an image, right? So yeah, the image tag. You're developing a new web page. You need to create hyperlinks that point to other pages on the World Wide Web. Which of the following methods should you use to create these hyperlinks on your page? So yeah, this one also okay, I reckon. I mean, maybe, wait, are they tricky? No, they're not really tricky. So you know that the A tag is used for hyperlinks. Even if you forgot what attribute points to the hyperlink, you know that the A tag points to hyperlinks. So you can immediately eliminate the image tag. That's not going to be used to create a hyperlink. The link tag, that's for CSS. The HTML tag with what? No, so this, okay, that one's obviously. So yeah, if you knew it was the A tag, you didn't even need to know that it was the href attribute in this case, but hopefully you knew both. Okay. Question 4. So yeah, I think these have been okay so far, but yeah, guys, let me know if you want to spend some more time on anything. Okay. 4. You need to perform data validation to ensure that the input fields are not empty and the user's email address and phone numbers have been provided in the required format. You need to minimize the transmission of information across the networks. Which of the following coding approaches should you follow? Use JavaScript, A, use JavaScript code that executes on the web server. B, use C# code that executes on the web server. C, use JavaScript code that executes in the browser. and D, use C# code that executes in the browser. You guys have actually seen a super similar question to this. I think, yeah, I remember you guys have seen a very similar question to this. So number one, they say we must minimize transmission across networks. So they're saying, you know, you want to minimize communication with the server is how I worded that in the quiz one morning or one afternoon. And so immediately we can eliminate two of these because as far as the MTA is concerned, JavaScript code that executes on the web server, not possible. C# code that executes in the browser, not possible. So we can eliminate A and B. So we're choosing between B and C, and which one will minimize communication with the server. If we use C# code on the web server, we have to communicate with the server. So we want to stay in the browser and just use JavaScript that executes in the browser. So I don't think that was too bad. You write a large amounts of JavaScript code for your website. You need to take advantage of caching techniques to make sure that web pages load as quickly as possible. You also need to ensure that you can modify the JavaScript code with the least amount of effort. What should you do? Yeah, this one, okay, let's go through the options because they're pretty long. Write JavaScript code inside the script tag, include the script within the head tag of the HTML page. Okay, honestly, not a bad solution. Why does it not answer this question? The problem with that answer is caching techniques. Okay, caching techniques are the problem with that particular answer. I did explain this when we covered it. I guess it might be, we do have quite a lot of time and we're moving through this quite quickly. So maybe I can give you guys a quick, just to re-explain this little bit for you guys, if that's fine. So you can see if we put things in separate files, then when we change one file, we don't have to re-download all of the files. So you can see I've got a whole bunch of, okay, it's all compressed and stuff, but whatever. There's a whole bunch of CSS here, okay? And there's obviously the standard HTML here. Because they're in separate files, if I edit the HTML, the computer doesn't have to re-download the CSS, right? So that's why it can take advantage of caching. So you want it to be in a separate file. If it's in the same file, then when you edit one part of the code, like the HTML or the CSS, and the JavaScript's in the same file, then you have to re-download everything. So you can't take advantage of caching, okay? So yeah, write JavaScript code inside the script tag and include the script within the body tag of the HTML page. Nope, okay, that's silly. Because you say you're writing a large amount of JavaScript code. Writing a large amount of JavaScript code inside the body of your HTML documents is not going to be easy to edit, right? Write the JavaScript code in a separate file. Use the source attribute of the script tag to link to the JavaScript file. That's correct. Let's check out the next one. Write JavaScript code in a separate file. So that bit's correct, but then they say use the href attributes of the link tag to point to the JavaScript file. Guys, when would we use the href of the link tag to point to a different file? When would we use that? What file would we be pointing to in such a case? Anyone? What file would we use the href link tag to point to? I guess actually Alex's most recent answer answers this one as well. CSS, okay, CSS. Why? Because CSS is a hypertext specification, so it makes sense that we would point to it with that. JavaScript is not a hypertext specification, so we use the source attribute, also the script tag, obviously for JavaScript, okay. Which of the following processes is responsible for providing the ASP.NET functionality? This one I also showed you guys. A lot of these should have been a total mystery to you. And that's fine. You only had to remember that the ASP.NET Worker process was one of the core parts of the ASP.NET infrastructure. What was the other part of the ASP.NET infrastructure? And I'm going to wait on this one. This question is the hill I die on. Okay. So someone please tell me what is the other aspect of the ASP.NET infrastructure? The other important aspect. Yeah, cool. The namespace. Okay, the namespace. The .NET namespace. So that's cool. Okay, nice. All right, question 7. You are developing an ASP.NET web page that displays the status of a shipment, displays status of a shipment, fair enough. You need to write some code that will change the web page's appearance and assign values to some controls. Where should you put this code? Okay, this one, again, not too bad because we did see some practical demonstrations of this. I am thinking about showing you guys a more in-depth usage of the view state, in which case we'll see more of this. But we can just, so initialize component method, that's a silly answer, red herring. The init event, so the init events we would use for things that we want to occur before further page processing. So when the controls are being initialized, when their values aren't being set or anything yet, they're being initialized, like we demonstrated a little bit of. And pre-render is the final warning. You don't want to be doing things in pre-render if you can avoid it, right? Like that's like your final chance to be doing anything. So the load event is the very standard way of doing this. And you can see that it's the standard way of doing it by how when you create a new web form, like I showed you guys in Visual Studio, it automatically creates the method for the load events because that's where it expects you to put stuff. Cool. This one I pointed out a lot. Okay, you write the code below in your web page. You expect this code to be executed in response to the load events of the ASP.NET page. However, when you request the page, you notice that the method is not executed. What should you do to make sure that the page load method is executed when the load event of the web page is fired? And I pointed this one out a lot, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. You have to set the auto event wireup attribute to true inside that page directive at the top of the page. And I showed you guys this quite a bit. I also showed you what it was doing, right? It was the reason that we didn't have to add the events to the list using that plus equals thing. So it saved us some time. It automatically handled that for us, okay? You need to display specific messages to the users when their browser is not running JavaScript. Which of the following code segments should you use? This one, oh yeah, not too bad either. I think you guys have seen this one in a quiz as well, and we discussed it quite a lot, right? Yeah, so no script. Again, very weird. You'll never use this, and you'll probably forget it. But yeah, it's not a difficult question. Correct, Alex, easy. Okay, this one, a little bit weird, but I would hope that, I don't know, we did discuss it briefly, but I did show you this in particular with the different method name. So we're saying you're developing an ASP.NET application using C#. On your web page, you want to display the results returned by a C# method named getShipmentStatus when the page is rendered to the client. Which of the following code segments should you use to call the getShipmentStatus method? Now, what's interesting here is that they give you like a lot of options, but kind of, so A to C are all wrong for the same reason. Okay, and it's that this is the name of a C# method, and it should not be specified inside a script tag. Okay, so scripts, again, you can say this language equals C# thing. But I did tell you guys when we were going through the page lifecycle, and I showed you how you would render an expression. I have no idea what the sign after the on D is. So it's a percentage sign. It's a percentage sign. And that's the correct answer. So I will, okay, you know what? I'll remind you of this. I'll remind you guys of this because I did, when I saw this one, I was like, I remember discussing it, but I was worried. So I don't know if you guys remember this. I'll post it in the chat. So I showed you this before, and it was how I got the IP address to render on the BFMTA Heroku app thing. Okay, because you can type expressions, C# expressions in these percentage tags, and they will be run by the server in C#. Okay, so it's like a special tag that ASP.NET adds to HTML. Okay, basically, and I showed you guys a few uses of it. But it was so long ago, so I was worried about this one, to be fair. So if you didn't get it, don't worry too much. It's not particularly tough, I don't think. but it's weird. So yeah, fair enough. I think we'll do one more worked example for this stuff next week Friday, before we get started on chapter 5. I selected that, then changed it. Okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah, they do sort of weight you towards using script tag by making 3 of the 4 options include script tag. And this one looks like almost too simple to be the right answer. But yeah, it is D. And yeah, I did show it, but yeah, it was long ago. So I'll show you guys again. Okay, I'll show you guys again. You're developing an ASP.NET application using C#. You create a code behind class named status that contains the business logic. The class is under the namespace Northwind and is stored in a file named status.aspx.cs. You need to write the user interface code that uses this class. Which of the following code segments should you use? So this one is the one I gave you guys the hint for, because actually, I don't know if this question is just old or if they just haven't updated it, but I thought it was very just silly, honestly. But I'll describe why now. So let me just, okay, I zoomed in so much to get a clear view of it. Okay, there we go. So I thought it was a bit silly. So you guys have seen this being used, because we would have discussed it a little bit when I was showing you, was it last week? Or the week before? And I also pointed you to the bottom of page 101 after Christian asked what C&D looked like. And nowadays, so now if you do this in Visual Studio, when using C#, it will give you this. It'll give you B, in fact. So it'll give you the code behind equals status.aspx.cs. Whoa, how did you zoom in? Just control plus. So we've got code behind equals status.aspx. No problem. And inherits, okay? So this class name thing you wouldn't use, so don't even worry about it. So inherits was a giveaway here. So using inherits eliminated 2 of the 4 options on this question. The difference that they expected you to know is that this one uses the source. You can't see it, however much you zoom in, but that says source, SRC. Instead of where the previous one says code behind, okay? Now, the difference that they expected you to know, and this is why I gave you the hint, because honestly, it's quite silly by modern standards. But anyway, the difference that they expected you to know is that code behind is used when programming in Visual Studio or Visual Basic, sorry. Code behind is used when programming in Visual Basic, and source is used in other cases. Okay, so source is used with C#. Okay, which is why the hint I gave you sort of gave this one away. You will not be asked this question, but it is, yeah, that's why I gave you the hints. What you must remember, guys, is the inherits bit. Okay, remember the inherits bit. Okay, where it says inherits equals northwind.status. Do you remember that part? Okay. All right, zoomed out a bit. Throws you all around the page. Okay, cool. And now the rest of the questions, I think, yeah, these are reasonable. So do take note of them, but I think the first 10 are what you must be your focus. And actually question 20, I'd say, is pretty interesting and important. Okay, so we say you are developing a restaurant locator website in ASP.NET and C#. As users browse through the website, each of the web pages must display a list of the recently viewed restaurants in the lower left corner. You want this information to be available across web pages and browser restarts, but do not want to use server-side resources to accomplish this. Which of the following state management techniques will help you accomplish this with minimum effort? Okay, so what's interesting about this one, they give you quite a lot of hints, but I think it still could be maybe a little tough, but I'll go through how you would deduce the answer here. Okay, so number 1, they say you do not want to use server-side resources. So if you guys remember that distinction we had between client-side state management and server-side state management, they have told you ignore server-side state management. Okay, that's what they've told you here. Ignore the server-side state management options. So we're not talking about application state and we are not talking about session state. So that eliminates the last one. Sessions is out. Okay, sessions is out. That left us with cookies, view state, and hidden fields. what told us that what told us the answer. So they say you want this information to be available across web pages, okay, across web pages and browser restarts. Let me point you to the part of your textbook. So hidden fields is pretty clear. So hidden fields are obviously, they're on the page, right? They're on the web page. Remember, it's just like marking an input tag as hidden, type hidden. I mean, I can show it to you one more time, just in case someone's forgotten. So if I hit view page source here, not view page source, inspect, and I move over to the sort of correct bits. Okay, sorry, taking a little bit of navigation, but I'll get there eventually. And there we go. So I can mark this as type equals hidden, and you can see it's gone, right? But obviously that's on the web page. So number one, it's specific to the web page. But number two, when I close the session, like that, obviously that field is gone, right? That field is gone. So when they say across browser restarts and across web pages, hidden fields, most definitely eliminated by that. View state is actually eliminated by that as well. I can point you to, so view state is discussed, we discussed it quite a lot as well, but on page 100 is where it's discussed. Yeah, and so yeah, it's paid, it's more for page specific stuff, and it's also not preserved across browser restarts. The only thing that is preserved when you close your browser, that your browser still saves, is cookies. And this is obviously one of the big problems of cookies, because it means that all of these corporations can store stuff on your computer and like store all this private information and personal information and track you across all of your browser sessions using these cookies. So it's one of the big problems of cookies, but also one of the big benefits of cookies, right? Is that when you close your browser and you open it again, you're still logged in, right? Like you can close your browser and open it again and you'll still be logged in. That's because a cookie was saved by your browser. Okay, so cookies is the answer here. And in particular, so the big things, they told us not to consider server-side resources, so sessions is out. And they also told us across browser restarts and across web pages. So that eliminated hidden fields in view state. Okay, cool. 13, you are developing an order entry application that will be used by all your employees in your company. You use ASP.NET to develop this application and deploy it to the company's Internet Information Services server. What should you install on the user's computers before they can access the order entry application? Okay, again, this one might seem tricky. I don't know, I couldn't gauge. But actually, when you think about what the purpose of setting up an application is, right, a web application, what's one of the huge benefits of a web application is that you can access all of this complex functionality, and all you need to access it is a web browser, right? So like, you don't need to install .NET on your computer because it's running on the server. You don't need to just install a development kit because you're not developing it, right? The developer will need a development kit, or they'll probably be using Visual Studio, but the developer will need some particular thing to program in, but you don't need it. You don't need any of this because it's all on the server. The only thing you need to access this ASP.NET application, this web application, is a web browser. And web browsers are very lightweight. They come on everything, right? Everything has a web browser nowadays. Well, obviously, if it has a graphical interface, it'll have a web browser. So yeah, they're very lightweight. It's the only thing you need. This is the huge benefits of web applications. If you have a bunch of really weak computers and you need them to be running some complicated stuff, then web apps are how you achieve that. Okay. You create an ASP.NET web service that tracks the shipments of orders. Cool. The web service includes a class named status service, which contains the method below. You note that you can instantiate the status service class from a web service client project, but the get status method is not available. What could be the problem? So they, again, reading the question, it might go like, wow, there's so much that could be going wrong, right? Because like, obviously, you can tell what would be breaking. But they give you this code snippet here. And immediately, if you were already suspicious, that would be cool, because what's not included, remember, all web services, the classes need to be marked as a web service, and the methods need to be marked as web methods. And you can see there is no square bracket web method at the top here. Okay, and so we read through the options. Only properties can be part of the public interface of a web service. That's wrong. You guys have seen methods being a part of the public interface of a web service, right? I showed you that factorial one and that other one that added two numbers together. Those were methods and they were a part of a web service. So you've seen this. You must mark the method with the web service attribute. No, you must mark the class with the web service attribute. The methods of a web service can return only object data. No, you guys have seen a web service that returns integers. You've also seen a web service that returns strings, right? The one that converts something to lowercase, and the one that adds two numbers together, and the one that returns a factorial. So you can see that they don't only have to return objects. And yeah, the problem is here that you must mark the method as a web method. All web services, all web methods that you want to be available, all methods that you want to be available through a web service need to be marked as web methods. It took me a while to find the sentence there. Okay, looks like we should finish. 15, you have created a new web service that provides mapping data. You are working in a Visual Studio environment and you use C# as your programming language. You need to test the web service to ensure that it is returning correct results. What is the easiest way to test your web service? Copy and paste the web services code into ASP.NET Web Application, run the web application to see results. Invoke the web service from an ASP.NET client, run the web application to see the results. Run the web services project from within Visual Studio and use the test page that is displayed in the browser. Have a large number of beta testers use the website service and check for incorrect results. Okay, so the last one is, I guess, maybe a bit of a jokey one. The first three, I could see it being difficult to tell between these, but you've watched me do this before, right? Like when I was testing out our web services, you guys remember I hit build inside Visual Studio, and then inside Visual Studio, I right-clicked on the web service and hit run in browser, and it opened up a little test page where I could use everything. And so C describes that process. So you have seen this happen before. I mean, we can see the others: invoke the web service from an ASP.NET client, run the web application to see the results. So no, you don't want to run it from an ASP.NET client, okay? Because you're obviously testing it for web browsers. You want to test it for web browsers. Copy and paste the web. As soon as we're talking about copy and pasting all of your code somewhere just to test it, you can immediately know that that's the wrong answer. Okay, so that's the, yeah, I think hopefully that one covers it for you guys. Wait, there was one that I wanted to discuss a little bit more actually. It's fine. We'll see. You are developing an ASP.NET application that calls a web service to retrieve predictions for a given geographical area. The web service performs complex, time-consuming calculations to generate the predictions. It is hosted on a government web server where you have permission only to invoke the web service. The users of your web application complain that the user interface freezes when they attempt to retrieve the predictions. You have full access to the web server that hosts your ASP.NET application. Which of the following approaches should you use to resolve this issue? Move the ASP.NET application to a foster computer. I mean, we're on a web server here. You're not going to find a foster computer. Okay. Connect to the web service over a foster internet connection. That's not really solving the problem. You can't really tell your user this, right? Your user says that your app is very slow and you're like, well, get a faster internet connection. That's not a good look. Install additional memory on the web server that hosts the ASP.NET application. A and C are kind of the same. Use asynchronous calls to invoke the web service from within your ASP.NET application. That's the one. yeah, exactly. So the solution here, I think that example, who was it who asked the question? I think it was you, Christian, who asked what asynchronous was. But yeah, D's a good answer here, because Yeah, I think the example I gave you of YouTube can probably explain it to you guys. So like while this complex time consuming calculation, so they say there's a complex time consuming calculation, the main thing is that it's a time consuming calculation. So while this time consuming thing is happening, you just let it happen asynchronously. So it just happens in the background on the server, and the user can just do everything normal as they were doing it before. And all of the time consuming stuff happens on the server, and the website just updates when all of it finishes. Okay, and that's just what an asynchronous call will do. We did discuss it a little bit in the benefits of when we were talking about the benefits of JavaScript, because JavaScript functions are asynchronous. So like the function is called, but everything keeps happening. You can keep scrolling through the site. Everything stays normal. JavaScript processes the method or the function, and then the response is just given back to you. Okay. So you don't have to wait for it to finish. It does cause problems occasionally, as you guys can imagine, because it's like you don't know what order things are happening in, but usually it's a very good solution. Okay. 17, you are developing an ASP.NET application that calls a web service to retrieve inventory information. You know the URL of the web service. You need to invoke the methods of this web service within your web application. How can you generate the client-side proxy classes so that you can use the web methods? Okay, this one, little bits, okay, actually, this is the one I pointed you guys to in the hint, right? Was it for 17 and 19? Yeah, because so it's not difficult to add a web reference. You're literally just clicking an add button. And it's not difficult to understand what purpose it's serving, but I didn't actually show you a practical example of this. So I felt bad when I read this question. I think we can still, let's discuss it though. So you are developing an ASP.NET application that calls a web service to retrieve inventory information. You know the URL of the web service. You need to invoke the methods of the web service within your web application. Okay, basically we're programming an application and we're contacting a web service, okay? The web service is returning some classes to us. And the thing is, we need those classes, okay? We obviously, to be able to use the response. So use the web service discovery tool. You guys haven't been told about this, so that one's a bit of a red herring. Copy the .asmx files from the web server to the ASP.NET application project. Remember, you don't necessarily have access to the web server, okay? That's probably the whole reason this web service was set up, is so that you don't have to directly access their server. So they're not going to be happy with you copying the files across. Copy the build output from the web server to the ASP.NET application project. So this is basically saying, you know, after we build the project, when it compiles it into machine code, so basically what this is saying is copy the whole project over to your ASP.NET application. And again, you're copying from the web server. You don't have access to the web server, so it's not an option, okay? And yeah, so setting a web reference was the correct answer. Hopefully my little hint pointing you guys to page 112 got you that one. So yeah, but again, I guess I can show you, it's literally just one button click to do this. So I guess I can show you a practical example before next Friday. You are invoking a web service method that returns an array list object. The client application is written in C#, whereas the web service is written in Visual Basic. The web service is outside your corporate firewall. You receive, I see it is, Alex. We only have a few more to go, so hopefully you guys are okay. Yeah, cool, thanks. So the web service is outside your corporate firewall. You receive an object not found error when you call the method that returns the array list object, but can call other methods successfully from the same web service. What could be the problem? So as you guys know, or maybe you know, so this one is a bit tricky. This would be like a more advanced question, I suppose you could see it as. When we were learning about data structures in Rex Tester, remember we had to change from using system.collections, or by default it was using system.collections.generic, and we changed it to system.collections because that's where queues and stacks were, right? Array lists, again, this is a tough question. This is why I'm saying this might be a more advanced one, because array lists are not officially taught in the previous chapter, even in the textbook. So how they expect you directly to know this it's tough. But somewhat fair, I guess, because array list, so it is a list. So that kind of gives away the idea that it is data structure. So it's in system.collections, just like queues and stacks were. And so for some reason, when you're using this method that returns an array list, it's broken. It's not working on your computer. So you call this web server, it gives you an array list, but it's not working for you. And now they're asking you, what's the problem? So the first thing they give you is the client and the web service are not written in the same programming language. No, that's not the problem. Array lists do exist in Visual Studio and in C#, okay? So, and queues and stacks, they exist in multiple different programming languages. That level of compatibility is not the issue. The firewall is blocking all SOAP calls. No, it's HTTP, okay? That's how you would get around that one, probably. So it's HTTP because it's all transferred in XML. So HTTP must be transferring over this network all the time. And HTTP is not going to be blocked. Okay, this kind of thing is perfectly safe. It's XML. A firewall won't block it. Okay, the client project does not contain a reference to the system.collection namespace. That's correct. Okay, the issue is that the computer you're working on doesn't know what an array list is because it doesn't import system.collection. It doesn't say using system.collection. The array list cannot be serialized. Alex actually sent me a good definition of serialized just after you had finished the test. And so yeah, the main thing is here, serialize. When you saw serialized and you didn't know what it means, I guess you can trust your gut instinct and go, I wasn't taught this, this is not the answer. But on another level, if you want like a more technical description, serializing is when we store an object. So like all the properties of an object will have certain values. Like let's say you have a person object and it has a name, a hair color, and an age. You can save all of the properties of the object for later use. So like that saving process is called serializing, and then you can deserialize to get back to the object when you want to use it. Okay, so you just save the properties and you have the class, so you can just load those saved properties into the class. Okay, I also wrote up an array list here, but I don't want to use up too much of your time. Maybe we can discuss it a little bit, but anyway, so yeah, you're not saving anything, so D is not correct. Also, it's referring to a class, not an object, so it has no properties or no set properties, like there's nothing to save. So yeah, D is wrong too. A bit of a red herring though, really. So yeah, C is correct there. You are developing an ASP.NET application that uses a web service created by one of your large customers. This web service provides you with the order object, which has several properties. The developer of the web service has informed you that a new property named priority has been added to the order project. What should you do to be able to use the priority property in your code with minimum effort? Okay, so this one, it's weird, but so if you saw the last option, actually, I don't think it was too difficult, which is why I did want them to mark it as the correct option. The last option was update the web reference. Update the web reference. So the last option here, option C, was update the web reference, which is very clearly the easiest choice when you go through these different options. So the first option is create a new ASP.NET application. And honestly, you can stop reading there. You're not going to start the whole application again just because one property has been added to a web service, right? You're not going to create a whole new application. That would be a huge mission. Delete and recreate the web reference in the existing ASP.NET application. Recreating the entire web reference just because one property was added. Also a mission. Technically, of the three options they gave you, this is the most correct, but it would not be marked as correct because the correct option was actually C between this was actually D. This last one was D. And between this, it said update the web reference, which clearly the best solution. D was ask the developer of the web service. Again, already this is outside of the realm of possibility. We don't know necessarily who the developer of the web service is. We're not going to be speaking to them. We need to solve this problem in-house. You know, we're not going to be talking to the people who controlled the web service. That's a poor solution. Okay. Cool. 20. Last question. Sorry about taking up 6 extra minutes, guys. You develop a new ASP.NET inventory application on the Northwind web server. You deploy the files in the folder C/web inventory. The application should be available via the URL www.northwind.com/inventory. The URL northwind.com is already set up to point to the Northwind web server. what should you do to make your inventory application available at the expected URL? So the issue here is that, so northwind.com points to slash, okay? It points to like just slash, so C://, okay? So when you access northwind.com/web inventory, not inventory, web inventory, you will get access to that folder. But we expect it to be available at /inventory. So we don't want to have to go to /web inventory. We want to go to /inventory. So how do we do that? The first option they say, change the name of the directory, web inventory to inventory. No, that's a mission, because you don't want to have to be renaming things. It might require copying. It might have to change things in other parts of the application. You can imagine if there's another part of the application updating this web inventory folder and you change its name, that could break other things. So you don't want to change the folder that's already there, okay? Create a virtual directory named inventory and point it to C web inventory. That's correct. So you're going to make a thing at inventory that points to web inventory, a symbolic link between those two places, a virtual directory. Create a virtual directory named web inventory that points to inventory. That's just the wrong way around, right? C inventory doesn't exist. Web inventory does. So the virtual directory must point to web inventory, not to the thing that doesn't exist yet. Move the directory, and again, moving things is a problem because that might break other parts of your app, right? Yeah, and that's actually the whole test. Like I said, some tough parts. I think the first 10 questions, which honestly are the important ones, were okay. And yeah, that's that. Sorry, I took up some extra time. By the way, guys, so there's a knowledge assessment for chapter 4 on page 115. I have got answers for it, solutions for it, and I'll share them with you after I'm satisfied that enough people have done it. So please do go through the knowledge assessments at the end of chapter 4, page 115. Go through it. And I'll give you guys like a memo almost. And yeah, just to really cement your understanding of chapter 4's content. Okay. So yeah, please do that. It's only 20 questions. You can ignore the scenarios. If you want to take a look at them, feel free to. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, sir. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too, Amika. Yeah, thank you, Rohan. Thank you, Erika. You too. Enjoy your weekend. Yeah. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Byron. Cheers, everyone. Thank you for coming. See you next week. You too, guys. Cheers.